So today's video is about a neighborhood that is in an area that gets very little attention. I think that's wrong. I think that is, I think people get too focused on the other parts of the area and overlook this part of town. This neighborhood is called Haygood Point. You may not have ever heard of Haygood Point. I can understand why, because it's, again, a part of town that people don't often talk about. So I'm going to show you on the map first where Virginia Beach is, as we normally know where it is. Zooming in on the north central part of town, you'll see you've got Great Neck, you've got Little Neck, then you've got Bayside on the western side. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because oftentimes people focus on Great Neck and Little Neck, and also even near Thorogood, which is right over here, which is because it is in the Princess Anne School District. But people often overlook the northwestern part of Virginia Beach. There are some nice parts of town in Northwest Virginia Beach, very overlooked. One of the neighborhoods is Haygood Point. And what I'll do is I'll talk about the pros, of course, all the things I like about Haygood Point, but I will, of course, as always, talk about the cons too. There are some specific ones. They make it to where I think it would be worth living there if you're okay with living past or looking past these cons, but they still exist, and I want to make sure you know about them. If you look in the map right here, you'll see where Haygood Point is. Right here, you see Haygood Point Park, like right there. This whole thing right here is Haygood Point, this little peninsula. And you ask, well, what's the peninsula around? Well, Lake Smith is the lake that is around the Haygood Point neighborhood. So it has water access. But if you zoom in also, you also see the lake here. There's a lake in the middle of the neighborhood as well. So there are houses on both the pond or lake and also Lake Smith. So you have waterfront property. You also have houses off the water. So as a lot of neighborhoods in Virginia Beach originated, this used to be farmland. So the history of this neighborhood is interesting. Back in the early 70s, there was a family called the Olivers. They had a farm market, which actually going into I think it was the 90s. They had a store on Haygood Road, which is near Haygood Point. But up to that point, they started then developing houses in the area where they owned property, which is where Haygood Point is. So the construction started in the early to mid 1970s up until about 1990 when the final houses were being built. And at the end, you found about 250 houses in the neighborhood that were either on the water or off the water. And that's an interesting distinction because it is one of the few neighborhoods that I know of that has not only lake access, is in the central part of the neighborhood, but also larger lake access on the exterior of the neighborhood. And this area is very convenient. So if you look on the map again, you are like 5 minutes away from a lot of grocery stores or shopping areas. There's a Harris Teeter that is on Independence Boulevard that is very close, like right around the corner, and right in Haygood Shopping Center right here. But there's restaurants up and down Independence Boulevard. You can go all the way down to Town Center in like 9 minutes. Grocery stores nearby, like 5-7 minutes away. If you like grocery stores, specific ones like Harris Teeter, Kroger is about 8-9 minutes away. You've got Wegmans about 9 minutes away to Town Center. There are others nearby too, but I'd say in general, those are the ones if you do want a little more elevated shopping experience, those will be the ones I might suggest. But again, they're about 8 to 9 minutes away. But Independence Boulevard and Virginia Beach Boulevard and even Military Highway Northampton are going to be your spots to find most of what you need shopping-wise, especially going up into Shore Drive, which also has a lot of restaurants. Shore Drive, Independence Boulevard, Virginia Beach Boulevard also have a ton of restaurants. Good ones too. Going up towards the north part of Shore Drive, you'll find a lot of seafood places up on Shore Drive. You'll find a cool little nook on the north part of Thorogood, the place called the Rustic Spoon, and another couple restaurants there. 1608 Craft House is right there. You'll find little pockets as you drive through town where they had just a little restaurants and older mom and pops or chains, especially in town center. So you have a mixture there. And if you look, you see on the map here, you see all the things that are right up on Northampton Boulevard. If you're coming out of Haygood Point, you come out of the neighborhood, you can do Ferry Plantation Road right here. Haygood Road is right here. You can turn, you're like 2-3 blocks away to Independence. And that's where all these things are. Big shopping areas, Marshalls, some big boxes down there, skating center, some restaurants. What's cool about being this close too is this shopping center, Haygood Shopping Center, has some good restaurants. One is the Noodle Man, which I'm a fan of. I've talked about this in other videos. Great. They make their own noodles in the restaurant. That's one. Egg Bistro is a local classic, a great breakfast food. Clean Eats, which if you want healthy food, they do pre-make food, like lunches for people that, you're trying to stay on a certain calorie intake, certain type of foods. They'll make it, they sell it there for you, like individual lunches and like vegetables and meat and this clean eating. So that's a spot too I like. Of course, Chick-fil-A. So a lot of conveniences, a lot of restaurants that are super close to the entrance to Haygood Point. So that makes me a fan of that also. So let's talk about the real estate in Haygood Point. I mentioned that there are about 250 houses in here. You've got water access and you have water views and also houses off the water too. These are going to be mostly anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. There will be a chunk that will be between 3,000 and 3,500. There'll be a few sprinkled in there over 3,500 that will push the values up also. But most of these will be between like 22 and 3,400 square feet. 3 bedrooms to 5 mostly, but a lot of these will be 4. That's your most common amount of bedrooms. Brick colonial is what they consider the standard type of house that's in here. You'll find some ranches. You'll find some other unique designs in here, but most of them are going to be relatively similar. Nothing too crazy with designs. But the types of houses that are in here also make it feel very almost a little bit stately, kind of a classy feel to this neighborhood. Part of that is because the lot sizes are a little bit larger. Not massive, not usually over an acre. You'll find a lot of 1/3 of an acre, 1/4, 4/10, maybe a 1/2 an acre in there, but they feel large enough to where you're not on top of each other. So the definition, the distance between houses is one dynamic, and also the style in house, the look of the houses feels very nice in this neighborhood, as well as a lot of the yards are taken care of very well too, which also adds to the value of the property in my opinion. Now the prices in here, if you go into the low 2,000 or mid 2,000 square foot range, you can find houses in here in the 400s, 450, 475. Even a little bit, almost a little bit larger, you can find them in the low 500s, even tucked under 5, especially if you're off the water. Now, off the water, the max you're going to get to probably closer to 6. Most are going to be under 525 to 550. But once you get on the water, now that could be the pond in the middle, with the 20 to 25 acre pond in the middle, or Lake Smith, which is on the exterior, the larger lake. Either of those are going to have some cost increase. On the lake, the pond in the middle, that's going to be closer to the low 6s in that range, mid 6s. On Lake Smith, you'll find some that will be in the 7s, 8s, and over like 859 in very unique circumstances. But a bump up in value for those Lake Smith houses, generally speaking, compared to on the pond in the middle. The interesting thing about these ponds, side note, is that the pond in the middle is only about 10 feet deep. Now, that's interesting because the Lake Smith, the big one, if you look on the map here, the big lake, that at the average lake size depth in Lake Smith is only 5 feet. It's crazy because when you look at the lake, you think, okay, it looks like a big, deep lake. It's a very relatively shallow lake. The houses are great. They're built in a time period where you will find a couple issues, which I'll talk about in the cons section. But for the most part, designs, you can see that kind of transition from kind of older floor plan to more contemporary as you get into the 80s. And so more functional floor plans as you get into the 80s. So you'll find houses that do flow pretty well, generally speaking, but you'll find some mixture in there as well. Some good amount of brick houses too, which I'm a big fan of. And if you're in this neighborhood too, if you live on the water, on the pond or the lake, you definitely have lake views, of course, but on Lake Smith, you also have ability to use a boat up to 9.9 horsepower on that lake. And you can go up and down the lake and have at it. You can get smaller boats too, but you notice that there are no places to have larger boats, really big boats. This is not a place to park your yacht or your 40-foot fishing boat. That's not what this is. So it keeps the neighborhood in the lake pretty calm. But again, because of that, you have water access. It's just not as widespread as if you might get a deep water access spot over like in Little Neck or Great Neck, but you're going to be paying more for those also. So that's kind of the trade-off, is cheaper waterfront or water property, water views, but you don't have as many things that you can do with that water. Now, that being said, on the north part of Lake Smith, going up on the map, you'll see here that you'll find there's a fishing pier and also the Lake Smith natural area that's right here. This natural area is cool. It's got a boat launch also. So if you do want to fish, you can fish on the shoreline there at the fishing pier. This is a spot that if you do have a boat and you want to use that as well, you can use that instead. You can even boat from your house over to the natural area and go back and forth. That's a cool thing to do too if you do live in the neighborhood. Another cool thing that's in Haygood Point is the park. Haygood Point Park is right in the middle of the neighborhood. So if you want to do the overhead view, you can see that it's a pretty large park. It has basketball courts, got, I think, pretty big grassy area. It's got a playground also kind of tucked away near the trees. So a big area near the water that is on the corner of Harris Point Drive and Haygood Point Road. So if you're in the neighborhood, you have relatively quick access to this park. from wherever you might be living in the neighborhood. Now, this also is part of a civic league. I do like the kind of the neighborhood involvement that civic leagues allow for, but it's not an HOA. You're not paying into an HOA in this neighborhood. And that civic league also has civic league sponsored activities throughout the year. So you have a little bit of a more of a community feel in Haygood Point than you might expect when you buy a house and move in here. Now, the drawbacks to living in Haygood Point. Now, number one is because of these houses are being built in the 70s and 80s, you might run into some lead-based paint disclosure stuff. That's, to me, not as big of a deal personally, but something to keep in mind. But the biggest thing is, as you get into the 80s, these houses could have been built with polybutylene piping, which I've mentioned this before, is the piping that was built, it was used for construction in the 80s that was known to rupture, and they had 3 different phases. Each one had different degrees of concern or severity of concern for rupturing, and it got better over time. But these houses being built in the early 80s and mid 80s and even late 80s, you'll find that maybe some of the earlier stages of this polybutylene piping might have been used. Just keep that in mind as you're getting a house, and just check with your inspector to see if you can get an idea of if this house has that piping. Doesn't mean that it's going to rupture if you have it, but it's definitely worth knowing so you can prepare for it, or it might affect if you want the house or not. Another thing is the school district demand. This neighborhood has Pembroke Elementary School, Independence Middle, and Bayside High School. If you look online and look at the rankings of Bayside High School, you'll find that it's one of the school districts that has the lowest rankings online. I'm not necessarily one to make assumptions based on that, but if you do plan to move here, people that look online for houses, they often make decisions based on what they see online. Just do some more research on the school districts. Make sure you're comfortable with the school districts, the public school districts that are here. And if you don't want those, see if it's worth it to do private school as well, which there are a bunch of private schools in the area too. And I think another drawback would be is on the water access dynamic. Because the lakes are not very deep and they have restrictions as to what kind of boats you can use, I think, and also where you can fish, I think those are enough drawbacks to where people that love waterfront might not find that this is all of what they want in waterfront. But that's, again, why it's cheaper, generally speaking, compared to the other neighborhoods that are relatively close that have deep water access. You can put bigger boats on. That usually costs more. But I feel that based on where this location is, it's pretty central, but the cost of these houses in the 4s and 5s into the 6s, and on the water starting in the 6s, generally speaking, apples to apples, you'd find that I'd say Haygood Point, for what the water you get, or even off the water, that type of house in other parts of the city, I think will be a little bit more expensive, which is one of the benefits, I think, to living in Haygood Point. So if you have any other questions about relocating to Haygood Point, or Virginia Beach in general, or Virginia Beach through Williamsburg, let me know. It's what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have questions, I have my contact information in the description. Call, email, text. You can reach out at any point, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And if you have questions or comments too, you can comment below as well. And I will see you on the next video.